residency at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was the chief resident. Upon his return to Canada, he went on to an accomplished professional career, becoming the director of the bachelor's programs and director of emergency medicine training at McGill University, Montreal. He has organized and lectured at various international medical conferences, contributing to the training of thousands of physicians and students. He has served on the board of numerous academic and medical institutions working on policy and education. He is frequently heard on the radio and television all around the world, speaking on the role of GSL in health and disease, on which he is considered a world expert. And so big welcome to Jimmy Gutman.
Thank you very much, Denise. It's a real pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
We also have a co-host, Danielle, who is hold on, let me pull up her bio as well. She's a registered nurse and patient advocate for one of the world's leading integrative health centers treating late-stage cancers and chronic diseases. And so we're going to let Dr. Gutman, take it away. But Danielle and I will be facilitating the Q&A at the end. So be sure to ask your questions below. And Dr. Gutman, it's all you.
Thank you very much. And be sure to ask the toughest questions that you could think of. Because challenging me is a good thing. If I don't have the answers, well, then you might feel a little bit uncomfortable. And if I don't have the answers, I'll tell you I don't know. But most of the times, we do have the answers. And as Denise mentioned, I have written several books on glutathione, which is really the main topic, the thing that Immunocal raises. And my books on glutathiones, I don't mind boasting a little bit now. I've actually sold more books on glutathione than all of the authors in the world put together. But that's because I was crazy enough to change my medical practice to only studying one little molecule. But this molecule is really, really important. And let me just share some of that with you now. I'm going to need you, Denise, to allow me to share my screen.
Of course. Yes. Let me make sure you've got that.
Should be a little button there.
Got it. I made you the host, though, so you might need to make me the host again at some point.
I'll do that. So let me just try and get there. Can you see that okay? Good. Good. All right. So we're going to be looking at glutathione and Immunocal, and just those addresses that you see there. There's a YouTube channel. There's a webpage where you can either buy my book at Amazon or at that webpage there, and of course a Facebook page where I'm always posting new studies on glutathione, so you'll be able to keep on top of it. So Immunocal, well, this statement here it's pretty powerful statement. The science and research behind Immunocal will elevate the entire nutritional supplement industry. Now, I made that statement many, many years ago. We've been around for just about 30 years. And this statement absolutely came through. Every nutritional company that's heard of Immunocal holds it in the highest regard. And you will soon too. I know that you've had only a few weeks to gather together some fantastic testimonies and anecdotes. But what really makes Immunotech and Immunocal different from anything out there is the degree of science that we have, the amount of actual research publications that we've done on human beings. And you probably have a few health professionals on the call tonight, and they'll tell you that yes, research studies are really, really important, but the ones that count the most are the ones done in human beings. Double-blind, placebo-controlled, statistically relevant articles on human beings, and this is our strong point. So, what is glutathione? I know that many of you are quite new to this. I'll tell you that glutathione already exists in every cell of your body. We all have glutathione in our bodies. And glutathione really is the key to health. And I need to substantiate that. And I'll do that by showing you this following slide. This PubMed, this is the world's major website that researchers go to access original publications. And they will post pretty much every major medical and scientific article. You'll find them on PubMed. Every researcher is on PubMed every day. I'm on PubMed every day, and this will be a name that's recognizable to your doctors. So if you look up glutathione on PubMed, you'll find over 190,000 articles. Now, that may just seem like a number to you, so let me put it into context. If you were to look up vitamin C on PubMed, you might find about 45,000 articles. If you look up vitamin E, you might find 70,000 articles. So there are more articles printed on glutathione than vitamin C and vitamin E put together. So this certainly is making a huge impact in the medical community, in the research community, and this will eventually filter down into everyday language. And this word glutathione, although it may be strange to you, in a couple of years from now, everybody will be using the word glutathione as commonly as you use a word like antioxidant. So what does glutathione do? Well, it does probably 50 or 60 different things on a cellular basis, but let me kind of make this simple. Glutathione, what a great idea. You need to remember this word idea. And if you remember what IDEA stands for, you'll remember 90% of what glutathione does. Now, what the idea stands for, I is for the immune system, D, E is for energy, and A is for antioxidant. So if you can remember those four things, I know that that's still a lot, but if you remember that, you'll have a great idea of what glutathione does. So let's look at these in turn. Let's look at the immune system. We all have an immune system, and what is its main function? Is to protect you from foreign antigens. Well, foreign antigen, what is that? A foreign antigen can be a bacteria, it could be a fungus, it could be a parasite, it could certainly be a virus. So let me ask you a few questions. Now, clearly I can't hear you, but you can shout it at your screen. Let's look at bacteria. How much bacteria live on or in your body measured in weight? Just think about that for a second. How much bacteria are you carrying? Well, the answer is you're carrying around 4 pounds of bacteria. 4 pounds. And in fact, there are more bacterial cells in and on your body than there are human cells. And if you look at a person like myself, I'm actually not human. I am just as much bacteria as I am human. I'm a human bacteria hybrid, and so are you. And the question is, why are we not falling sick quickly from these? Well, a lot of these bacteria are good bacteria. They help us digest food. But it's our immune system that keeps these bacteria in check. Now, what about fungi? Do you have fungus on your body? Is there fungus among us? Well, absolutely. You see the flakes coming off that gentleman's scalp. You see the spots on the back of your kid. That ratty looking toenail, that misshapen brown deformed toenail, that is actually a fungus. Now, is that life threatening? Not for most of us. It's just a cosmetic thing. But something like that toenail on an AIDS patient, who is immunocompromised, will kill them. A fungal infection is a very common way for AIDS patients to pass away. And it's a strong immune system that turns these potentially deadly organisms into something that's just a nuisance. What about parasites? Are you in close contact with parasites? And I'm not talking about your brother-in-law. Well, tonight, when you put your head down on your pillow, when you lie down on your mattress, you're literally crushing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of parasites when you hit the sack. Now, for you and I, in good health, these are not a problem. But I've spent many years in an emergency department where I see immunocompromised patients that are absolutely crawling with these things because they can't fight them off. Here's another quiz. Let's look at a tumor cell. You see that big old white ball? That's a tumor cell. And right next to it is a white blood cell that we call a killer T lymphocyte. And we see that the white blood cell, which is our frontline defense of our immune system, is attached to the tumor cell, and it's going to break it down and clear it out of your body. So how many cancer cells exist in your body right now? How many cancer cells do you think you have in your body right now? I'll make a guess, but most of you won't guess the answer. About 1 million. This is a McGill University study that shows that most of us have 1 million tumor cells in our body. The young people, healthy people, a little less, smokers, a little bit more. But so what is stopping us from having to go visit the doctor in a couple of weeks? And that is the immune system. So I'm going to teach you how the immune system works in 90 seconds. So doctors out there, please forgive me for that. And tonight's case subject will be myself. And when I'm in Houston for the next conference, which I hope I see you all there, I'm going to be shaking hands with people and perhaps giving them a peck on the cheek. But this handshake, you see, there might be a glob of viral particles on the person's hand. So I've contacted that bunch of viruses, and that virus gets transmitted to my finger. And someone is going to ask me a difficult question. So I'm going to either scratch my nose or rub my eye. And all of a sudden, this viral particle has a chance to enter into my immune system, into my bloodstream. And very quickly, it will trigger an immune response. You see all these white blood cells, the frontline soldiers, again, of the immune system, will notice that this viral particle is there and it will attack it. Now, I say it in 15 or 20 minutes, that viral particle may be 100,000 or a million viral particles. They multiply very, very quickly. And so you end up with huge numbers of viruses swimming around in your bloodstream. The problem is that we only have so many white blood cells, and they become overwhelmed. We don't have enough white blood cells to fight off all of the viral particles. So what do we do? Well, these white blood cells start to clone themselves, and they can multiply with good glutathione levels up to 500 times. That's not 500 white blood cells. That's 500 multiplications. So you don't have enough room to calculate that on your iPhone or your calculator. So that's the way we fight off these infections. We multiply our white blood cells. And for those of you who, again, in the medical profession, you know that an increased white blood cell count is a sign of infection. Now, here's the key. This multiplication of white blood cells, this duplication, starts to fall as you run out of glutathione. And when you run low on glutathione, well, you may lose the battle and you may lose the war. And without glutathione, your immune system just cannot function. Now, that's just one explanation of how glutathione supports the immune function. There are others, but that's enough for you to chew on. So that's glutathione, literally food or fuel for the immune system. Now let's look at the D for detoxification. And again, if anybody out there has ever worked in an emergency department, you know that one of the nastier things that we need to take care of are people who have taken intentional overdoses. I'll ask you another quiz. What do you think the most common drug or substance we find on a blood test in people who've taken overdoses? Well, the most common substance we find is alcohol, which kind of makes sense. But the next most common overdose, which can be quite deadly, is a Tylenol overdose, or otherwise known as acetaminophen. And it goes by different names: Tylenol, Adasol, Panadol. And this can be quite a deadly overdose. Anybody who takes a big old bottle of extra strength Tylenol will probably kill themselves. Now, I don't know whether it's a good thing to tell you that, but it is a very toxic and life-threatening. A little bit about glutathione, because I was taught as an emergency doctor that the antidote to a Tylenol overdose, and this Tylenol overdose, what it does, it breaks down your liver and you die an excruciating death in 2 to 5 days. Now, I think that you die in 2 to 5 days. I think that's a good thing. Now, why would I say a crazy thing like that? Because if I can get my hands on you in the first 24 or 48 hours, I can save your life. And the way I save your life is by raising your glutathione levels. And by raising your glutathione levels, remember, I have 5 days to do this. By raising your glutathione levels, I'm able to detoxify the damage done by Tylenol. So as an emergency doc, I knew glutathione, yeah, Tylenol overdose. But what most doctors are not aware of, and what most people are not aware of, is that glutathione is responsible for getting rid of the toxins in thousands of substances. cigarette smoke and automobile exhaust and pesticides and herbicides and the pollution that comes out of industrial plants. Why do I have fish here? I have fish here because of mercury poisoning and heavy metals and smoked foods and cleaning products and pickled foods and on and on and on. And by no coincidence, the highest levels of glutathione to be found is in your liver, which is, after all, your major organ of detoxification. So I tell people that next to water, there's probably no more important detoxification substance in your body. So let's move on to E for energy. We could talk about this for an hour, but I'll just do it very, very briefly. We could talk about it on a molecular level, a cellular level, of physical performance. Let's just look at one little structure in your cell called a mitochondria. This is a little structure that you can have one, you can probably have a dozen inside of each of your cells. And these mitochondria produce energy. Now, they produce energy, but they also produce pollution. And the pollution that they produce is called a free radical. And if it was not for a constant supply of glutathione to these mitochondria, they would literally burn up. They would burn up from oxidative stress. So for maintaining energy, you also need a huge supply of glutathione. Let's move on to antioxidant. Now, this is the function that many of you know, recognize as the major role of glutathione. It is called the master antioxidant. Now, if we're using a word like antioxidant or oxidative stress, we need to look at what oxidation is. Here's a bunch of nails I left outside in the rain and they rusted. Rusted is oxidation. Here's a tub of butter I left out in the sun and it became rancid. This is also oxidation. Here's an apple that I cut and I left on the counter for 15 minutes and it turned brown. This is also oxidation. So am I saying that we're rusting, getting rancid, and turning brown? Well, actually, yes. If you look at these dark spots on the back of grandma's hands, do I care about the black spots and the fact that they're not that pretty? No. But when I see those black spots, I also know that there's oxidation taking place in her body. She might have spots like that in her heart, in her lungs, in her brain. So I very much care about grandma oxidizing. And there's a whole new field of medicine and studies is the role of oxidation in the body called free radical biology. And it has described antioxidants, literally hundreds of different antioxidants in hundreds of different medical diseases. These are just some diseases that start with AD and end up at AG. Well, there's many more letters and there's 25 other letters in the alphabet. These are all diseases associating with antioxidants, oxidation, and the role that antioxidants has in reversing or retarding hundreds of disease processes. So these things called free radicals and oxyradicals and oxidation and oxidative stress, where does this all come from? Well, I read a line in an article that I stole. Free radical production is an unfortunate consequence of life. If you eat, you produce free radicals. If you're breathing, you produce free radicals. Pollution produces free radicals. Aging has been defined as a lifelong collection of oxidation and free radicals. So here we have, you see them here, these green structures. We'll call them free radicals. So let's see what happens. So you got some free radicals there on the left, and you got some healthy cells there on your right. Now you'll see this free radical drifting towards a healthy cell, and the free radical has touched and gotten into the cell, and it's caused a lot of damage. Now, the thing about free radicals is that you consider them contagious. If one structure is damaged by a free radical and it's touching another structure, it too will become damaged by free radicals. So there you have two cells, two cells affected with free radicals, damaged by free radicals, and there's a third one, and voila, there you go, a brown spot on the back of your hand or in your brain. But fortunately, we know how to deal with free radicals. We use antioxidants. And the most famous antioxidant, of course, is vitamin C. Now, here we see some vitamin C molecules looking suspiciously like a Pac-Man, and we'll see why. See, these free radicals will go ahead and grab a hold of a free radical and neutralize it. So the vitamin C has neutralized the free radical, but it's also neutralized itself. Its mouth is full and it can't go on to do any more work. So at this point in time, we get rid of it out of our cells and we get rid of it out of our body. Has anybody looked at the color of your urine after you take a multivitamin pill? Well, your urine is usually bright yellow or even orange. And what you're looking at is an free radical antioxidant complement that you're peeing out. And we would lose all these antioxidants very quickly unless we were eating oranges and pineapples and lemons all day long. But I'm going to show you something else that happens. Up until this point, many of you recognize what's going on. But what I'm going to show you is going to be new for most of you. See, what that vitamin C free radical complex can do is find a glutathione molecule or a glutathione system. And what it will do, it will hand off the free radical to the glutathione molecule, thereby liberating itself. And because it's free, it can scoop up another free radical and again hand it off to the glutathione system. And that's not just vitamin C that does that. It's every single antioxidant that we know of. Vitamin E, pycnogenol, selenium, and the glutathione has the ability of dumping the free radical out of the cell. So glutathione recharges all of the antioxidants. Glutathione recycles all of the antioxidants. And without glutathione, none of the other antioxidants that you know of, whether they're in the fruits and vegetables that you eat or the supplements that you take, they could not work without glutathione. And that is why we call glutathione the master antioxidant. So remember, idea, immune system, fuel for your immune system, detoxification. Next to water, the most important detoxification substance in our body. Energy, absolutely essential at multiple levels. And antioxidant, glutathione, your master antioxidant. Now, the problem is that we lose glutathione not just daily, but minute by minute. Stress, will lower glutathione levels. Injury, trauma, burns, poor diet is something we all suffer from in the year 2025. Drugs, infection, by definition, taps into glutathione levels. Pollution, the aging process. Every 10 years of age, we produce 10% less of glutathione. And maintaining glutathione levels for all of those reasons and more is absolutely critical, especially entering into well into the 21st century, but things are getting worse. The viruses that we're seeing, the pollutants in our environment, just so many threats out there. Now, how do you raise glutathione? Now, please pay attention to this slide. This might be the most important slide you're going to look at tonight. If you're only going to remember one slide, remember this one. You cannot raise your glutathione levels by eating glutathione. And you're going to find many companies that market edible glutathione, oral glutathione, glutathione pills, glutathione powders. These do not work. And I want you to go onto a site like PubMed or just look up glutathione. Oral glutathione doesn't raise your glutathione levels. Glutathione is made inside of your cells. So the only way to raise glutathione levels is to give your cells the specific nutrients or building blocks that the cells will use to make glutathione. We call these precursors. So you need to eat glutathione building blocks for your cells to make glutathione. Now, I hope you remember this slide. If you look up what glutathione precursors are available to you, for example, those of you in the United States, there's this blue book called the Physician's Desk Reference. In Canada, it's a lighter blue called the CPS, or Compendium of Pharmaceuticals and Specialties. One of these books or more sits on the desk of every single doctor and every single pharmacist in North America. And these two books list all the medications that I can write a prescription for. Glutathione does not appear in these books. And if you look up glutathione precursors, well, the most common precursor that you'll find is something called N-acetylcysteine, NAC. NAC is a wonderful way to raise glutathione levels, except it has some problems. It has very real side effects, usually nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, mostly gastrointestinal side effects. And it has what we call a short half-life. In other words, after you take N-acetylcysteine or NAC, the half-life is only 3 or 4 hours. So if you want to maintain glutathione steadily throughout the day, you need to take NAC 3 or 4 times a day. And if you felt sick the first time you took NAC, you're going to feel 4 times as sick the fourth time you take NAC. Also, there are other differences. NAC has no nutritional value. NAC wears off after a couple of weeks, but it's a life-saving medication. The other thing that you're going to find is, of course, Immunical. This will show up in either one of those two books that sit on your doctor's desk or on your pharmacist's desk, and is described the same way any of the prescription drugs that you take, the pharmacology, the indications, the contraindications, references. This is recognized by all North American doctors. And the Immunical is the richest source of natural glutathione precursors. This is the major natural non-prescription methodology of raising glutathione recognized by the medical and pharmacy community. And it takes about 500 liters of milk to make 1 kilogram of Immunical. And quite simply, Immunical has a precursor that we call bonded cysteine. It's absorbed by the digestive system. It passes through the bloodstream. It's taken to your cells, and it raises glutathione, which enforces the immune system. And there's no magic there. There's no black box. There's no, well, Amazonian tribesmen have been taking it for 10,000 years kind of explanation. This is all very clearly mapped out in biochemistry, and it's fully understandable. Let's close this off just by looking at a few selected studies. Now, this first study, what they did was they measured glutathione levels in different age groups. And we see that the older you get, the lower your glutathione levels become. We become poor manufacturers of glutathione the older we get. So someone my age, between 40 and 80, I don't want to tell you my real age, I could be 20 or 40% glutathione deficient unless I was doing something. Now, what's unusual about this graph is that if you look at glutathione levels in people who are like 100 years old, all of a sudden you find they have great glutathione levels. My question to you is, why? Well, think about it for a second. The answer is, that's why they're 100 years old, because they had the inherent ability of maintaining high glutathione levels when all the other people who didn't have that genetic ability were eliminated from the population. This is natural selection at its best. People who are able to maintain high glutathione levels are the ones who are going to live the longest. Here's another study. This is mostly a geriatric study that shows the correlation between glutathione levels and levels of health. So first, we took young volunteers and we measured their glutathione levels, and you see they're pretty good, the dark blue box. Then we took what we called healthy elderly people. That's the blue box. And we measured their glutathione levels, and they were doing pretty good. A healthy elderly person is someone that went to visit the doctor only when they needed to. Then the light blue box were elderly outpatients. These are older people that went to visit the doctor on a regular basis. They get their blood pressure checked and their prescriptions refilled and that kind of thing. And you notice that they have yet lower glutathione levels. This last box, the elderly inpatients, these are older people who are in the hospital. And we see a perfect correlation of glutathione levels and their level of health. So this is just one very eloquent, simple study that shows a correlation between levels of health and glutathione levels. The higher the glutathione level, the healthier you are. Here's the last study here. We were looking at athletes. We spent many years looking at sick people, but then we wanted to look at really healthy people. So we looked at athletes. And one of our older vice president, presidents of research. He was an athlete himself. He was a cyclist. He had won all kinds of Canadian awards, anyways, for cycling. And he gave a box of Immunical many, many years ago to one of his buddies on the Canadian cycling team. And the guy goes off to the mountains in Alberta, the Rocky Mountains. It must be a tough place to train for cycling. And he's living in a cabin with five other cyclists. And they're training in the mountains. Five of them get a cold, and this guy does not catch a cold. Now, does that have any statistical relevance? Oh, none whatsoever. It's too small of a group. But you could be sure that the other five guys wanted to start taking the Immunical. So, which was great for us because all of a sudden we had a small cohort of athletes that we could study. And athletes are really easy to study. They do all the work themselves, and how many hours they sleep, what they eat. And of course, one of the things they look at is how often they get sick, because catching a cold or a virus is going to interfere with your training. So we had these six athletes taking Immunical, doing the same training, and we brought them at the end of their training season to talk to them about what happened. And sure enough, they had documented that they had less frequency of viral illnesses. And we kind of knew that was happening. We were really happy to validate it. I see athletes that work out really hard, you can actually drop your immune system if you're overtraining. So they didn't. And we were happy. But one of the athletes says, yeah, but when I hear somebody go, yeah, but, I'm always waiting to hear bad news. And I reluctantly asked him, yeah, but what? And he said, yeah, but our performance has improved. Oh, everybody's like getting really excited. And I said, well, what do you mean your performance has improved? And he said, well, our times are about 1% faster. And everybody starts to cheer and give each other high fives. And I'm sitting there like a lump on a log, wondering, what are these guys so happy about? A 1% better? And until it was explained to me, to get this, the difference in most Olympic events, not just cycling, all of them, the difference in most Olympic events between the gold medal and the poor slob coming in fifth place is less than 1%. So 1% for them was spectacular. So we decided we're going to do a formal study. We went to McGill University. We took some university athletes. We put half of them on Immunical and half of them on a placebo. We put them through the identical training program for a summer, brought them back, and at the end of the summer, did we show a 1% increase? No. We showed between a 10 and 15% increase in muscle strength and endurance. And when this study was published, we were getting calls from athletes and professional organizations and amateur organizations and teams and athletes. And now, watching the last Olympic game, I was able to watch it with John, and we were pointing at the screen going, he's on Immunical, she's on Immunical. And now there are many Olympic athletes, American athletes, British athletes, Polish athletes, Mexican athletes taking Immunical just for performance. And I guess that was a kind of a long story, but we've shown the same thing in geriatrics. And of course, we go ahead and we try and get patents for the Immunical. We recently got a patent for the treatment of autism, a patent for a nutritional product that shows success in treating autism. And of course, we have many other patents, over 80 other patents. We have a patent for the treatment of AIDS because of the studies that we've done. We've got a patent for the treatment of cancer, a nutritional product that has a definition of it works like chemotherapy, but clearly it's not chemotherapy. We have other patents pending. We have a patent for helping with neuropsychiatric or neurodegenerative disorders, including Alzheimer's, including Parkinson's. We have a patent pending for traumatic brain injury. So, all of you worried about how to take care of your American football injuries in Canada, of course, it's hockey. Well, I guess it's hockey in the States too. In Mexico, it's boxing and martial arts. For the military, for car accidents. So we're going to have a patent for treatment of traumatic brain injury. And of course, these are all the result of published studies in some of the best medical journals in medicine and in science. So 92 studies up to date, including 26 gold standard human trials. These are studies done in human beings with placebo-controlled, statistically relevant, randomized studies. These don't exist for other companies. Now, other companies like oral glutathione companies, for example, will use our studies as proof that their product works. And it's a complete, I guess, just not right. I won't use any bad words here. There are 27 animal studies, 7 laboratory studies, almost 20 theoretical papers, 39 human studies and reports. So make sure you get your hands on this book. It's available as a PDF, and speak to the person that invited you to your call. So that just touches upon our absolutely wonderful and spectacular product. And thank you for your attention.
Wow. Are we all mind blown or what? Thank you so much, Dr. Gutman, for your information. We've been kind of compiling all the questions that we've gotten. I know you answered some as we went through. Can you make me a host again? Do you know how to do that? And then Danielle?
I just did.
Oh, you did? Okay, then I
Yeah.
can make us all spotlighted. All right, cool. Danielle, do you want to start with any of the questions you captured?
Sure. So a lot of the questions I want to, for the purpose of time, just compile some of these things. But a lot of people were asking about specific ailments, diagnoses, things like that. So I'm going to group a couple together. And maybe one of the questions is who is Immunocal for? So specifically talking about type 1 diabetes, different autoimmune diseases, MS, lupus, fibromyalgia. We had some anxiety, depression. I know we touched on autism, but just share a little bit, and we don't have to go into all the clinical details, but who is Immunocal for?
Danielle, it would be a lot easier for me to answer who's it not for. It's for every healthy person, and it's for everybody with a health challenge. There are for sure a few diseases that are not going to affect, and it's almost embarrassing because a person's first reaction is, well, it sounds like, you start listing all the things that Immunocal can take care of. It sounds like you're listing or you're reading off of a bottle of snake oil. And how could one substance have effects on so many different diseases? And it's because glutathione is such an essential part of our physiology. It's such an essential part of our cells So, for example, here's the book. um, just there are different chapters in the book, and cancer is a chapter, aging, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hepatitis, AIDS, lung disease, digestive diseases, and on and on and on. Um, I have to look at the book because there's so many editions. This is the latest one. It's got 34 chapters. Um, so the best thing about the book is that not only does it explain how glutathione is involved with these diseases, but much more importantly, you see, doctors will flip through the pages that I wrote and really not give that much of a hoot. But at the back of each chapter are the references from the original literature. And there are thousands. I went through maybe 10,000 articles to put the book together. So you need to be quite comfortable looking at the references and even looking up the original material. You mentioned diabetes. This is a very common question. I will pick on diabetes just as an example. Will taking Immunical lower your blood sugar? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. It really depends on the individual. Why do I insist that every diabetic take Immunical? I mean, every diabetic should be taking Immunical. It doesn't do anything for your blood sugar. Why do I insist? Well, diabetics run into trouble for two major reasons. One, they're immunocompromised. So diabetics will have much higher frequency of foot infections, skin infections, bladder infections. So raising the immune response will help deal with some of these infectious complications. But the major cause of morbidity and mortality, the major cause of sickness and death in a diabetic has to do with their circulation. If they have their major circulation, their macro circulation affected, diabetics have a much higher rate of heart attacks. Diabetics have a much higher rate of stroke. And when they're micro circulation, their small vessel disease, diabetics are much more prone to diabetic blindness. What is diabetic blindness? It's the small vessels that feed the eye that get clogged up. Renal disease, kidney failure, it's the small vessels that get plugged up. Neuropathies, it's the small vessels that feed your nerves that become arteriosclerotic and aren't delivering oxygen to the tissues. So what's going on here? A diabetic has a much higher level of oxidation. There are many more free radicals going on because of the sugar in the blood. So you have a higher level of oxidation. How does glutathione fit in here? Well, oxidation, one thing that we have in our blood that oxidizes quickly are certain fats, the most notorious of which is cholesterol. Now, that's one reason a lower number in diabetics than they would in an otherwise healthy person, because diabetics oxidize quicker. So these fats become oxidized. The cholesterol becomes oxidized. And what oxidation does, it makes these fats stickier so that they gum up your circulation. And after a while, you gum up your circulation enough, you end up with blockages, and you end up with a heart attack or a stroke or blindness or kidney failure. This process of oxidation is slowed down or even stopped by a natural substance we have in our blood called glutathione peroxidase. If you have high glutathione levels, you have high glutathione peroxidase levels, and it will slow down the oxidation of cholesterol. So the reason why I want you to take Immunical, this is true preventive medicine. I'm not treating the diabetes as much as I'm preventing the long-term consequences that diabetes causes. This is true preventive medicine. This is such an eloquent mechanism that is so grossly overlooked by the majority of doctors, but we'll catch up.
Well, one question was, how come we are just learning about this?
Yeah.
I think the reality is when people ask, will it work for this? Or can it help me with this? The answer is yes. It pretty much can help you with any ailment and then protect you if you don't yet have the ailment. So I've been taking that clinical studies, and what we did is we uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, please give me a synopsis.
Oh, wow.
It gave us such great, like really easy digestible, paragraphs that we could utilize. And we are even doing a team giveaway this month, you guys. Go to our team page, the Immunitech Pro page, and you'll see if you complete the whole bingo card in this month, we're going to do a drawing for an Oura Ring. Why do we choose to do a drawing for an Oura Ring? Because you literally can track your sleep, your oxidative stress, your all these types of things, and people are seeing a result in just a few weeks on Immunical. So one question that we got was, how do you test for glutathione? Can you take a blood test and get glutathione, and what does that look like?
It is a very, very common question, and everybody wants to know where to get it tested. You can find companies online that test for glutathione for probably 30 or 40 bucks, but they're highly inaccurate. They're highly inaccurate. When we do our studies, we set up a special corner of the laboratory to do glutathione levels, and it's extremely difficult to do. We take fresh blood, we spin it down in a centrifuge, we skim off the white blood cells off the top of it, and we measure the glutathione levels inside the white blood cells. So we're measuring intracellular glutathione levels, and we're measuring it in your immune system. So this is the best way to measure glutathione levels. It's cost a couple of $100 per test. So it's not something that you can get done easily, and most laboratories don't measure glutathione levels. You need to know where to look for it. Are you measuring whole blood glutathione? Not that useful. Red blood cell glutathione, not useful at all. So you're looking for lymphocytic glutathione, and it's technically difficult to do. But I'm going to make a prediction now. Given the clever scientists and the monetary push to come up with new and improved ways of doing things, there will be a quick and effective and accurate way to measure glutathione levels in the next few years. And when that test comes around, your doctor will be measuring your glutathione levels as routinely as your white blood cell count or your cholesterol or your sugar. Because if you speak to research cardiologists, they'll tell you that measuring glutathione levels are extremely sensitive way of predicting a heart attack. If you ask a urologist or urology researchers, they'll tell you that measuring glutathione levels is a more effective way of determining kidney function than a BUN or creatinine. So it's coming. It'll be coming, but don't waste your money yet.
Awesome. Okay, so next question, you touched on this, and I just think it's really important to hear directly from you as we're going out into the field and we're sharing and we're being loud and bold and excited about this ImmunoCal, where sometimes, and I've had it from a number of people saying, well, I take glutathione, or I get glutathione IV, I get an IM,
Yeah.
So you touched on it. So I just want to hear directly from you, giving us some language as we're going in confidently of why this product is so superior. We see too a trend in glutathione skin patches. So give us what you would say to someone, a lay person, as to why ImmunoCal is the superior product.
It all comes down to clinical research. There's absolutely no researcher, no studies that show that glutathione patches work. It will raise glutathione levels in the skin underneath your patch, but it does not go systemic. It will not enter the bloodstream. So there's absolutely no research there. Oral glutathione, well, if you look up glutathione, you'll see countless experts and countless studies that show that oral glutathione does not work. It doesn't. Now you think about it. Why wouldn't doctors use oral glutathione? Doesn't work. Cysteine is sometimes used, but cysteine by itself doesn't work. It becomes rapidly oxidized, which is why in the 1960s, scientists developed N-acetylcysteine. So N-acetylcysteine does work, but it's going to have side effects, and it only works for a couple of weeks and then it wears off. Intravenous glutathione absolutely works, but the half-life of intravenous glutathione is measured in minutes. And there's some great videos of, for example, a patient comes in with Parkinson's in a wheelchair and is stumbling around and has a typical abnormal walking pattern. And he receives a dose of intravenous glutathione, gets out of his chair, and walks down the hallway in both directions completely normal. Just fantastic to see. Except by the time he gets home, he's back in the wheelchair. So intravenous glutathione works, but for a couple minutes. There are many different companies that claim to raise glutathione. You need to go to the literature. You need to see if there's any published studies. You may find one or two that are not repeatable, but Immunotech has over or close to 100 studies. And this is the big difference. And these other substances, if you show them to a researcher or a doctor, they're going to want to see the studies. And these other substances don't have any. They don't have any. So this is the big difference. Show me the human studies. That's the response.
Wonderful. One other thing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes.
And if you want a technical look at why other glutathione related substances don't work, feel free to go to my YouTube channel, because you'll find a few videos there that go into much more depth.
Wonderful. I've watched it. Their videos are so wonderful.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Talking about some words like that we have to be really careful of in the field, like going out saying this cures something. A little bit about that languaging just so that we're careful on our end as far as, what this truly does, and just to being careful on some of those claims.
Absolutely. And now I showed you some of the patents that we have, and these are patents that are public domain. I mean, you could look them up. Now, having a patent for Immunocal in cancer doesn't mean that you can say that Immunocal has any effect on cancer, but you can quote some of our studies. This study has shown a positive effect, but you can't say that it cures cancer. You can go to an autism study and say, well, this large study done in autism showed improvement not only in glutathione, but in the behavior of autistic kids. But you can't say that it's a cure for autism. So that you're absolutely right, Danielle. The word cure is something that we try to avoid. It may be possible that with RFK in the seat of power now, that nutritional supplements may be able to make some of these claims in the future, but as of now, no. We talk about the patents, we can talk about the studies, but we can't use the word cure.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, we've got just a few questions left. One is about animals. Is this helpful for animals, and how can they take it?
If you want your cat to have 18 lives, then use Immunocal. Cats, something about cats, they respond so well to Immunocal. And not to say that dogs don't. And even we've had some wild success with thoroughbred horses. But the people using it on their horses are sure not going to tell their buddies about it.
Competition.
Yeah. But
Well,
again,
and
we
I think,
don't.
again, it's like if glutathione will help XYZ, then absolutely, because our product helps your body create and release glutathione on its own.
Yes. Now we don't have the right to market it to animals. So we can't do any printed material or anything like that. But if somebody has a sick dog or cat and they ask if the cat can take it, absolutely.
The next question is about any adverse side effects or detox symptoms, reflux, heartburn. Is there anything that people might experience in that vein?
Probably the most common adverse effect would be cramping, and that's usually in an older person during the summer. And this is almost always due to insufficient fluid intake. So make sure that you're well hydrated, and that will usually take care of it. We will see an occasional detoxification reaction. So I'm going to make a little fun of Americans now. I was in the Midwest in a farming community, giving a talk about Immunocal, and mostly women there. And a couple of them came up to me afterwards and told me a story that after their husbands started taking Immunocal, they stank. And they stank of a pesticide that they had used 3 years earlier. And what they had done, see, here's where I make fun of Americans. If this much is good for you, well, that much it is going to be 10 times better for it. So they started their husbands right off on 3 packs a day. And so the husbands had a detoxification reaction, in this case, manifested by them eliminating that old pesticide through their sweat. Now, this was a very very curious side effect. But you may find some people that actually feel a little bit sleepy, may have a headache, and may have some just malaise for a couple of days. And usually these are people that start off with more than they should at the beginning. So if you can, you don't need to be using more than 2 packs to start off with if you're going to be using more than that. So we see detoxification reactions, but they're relatively rare. And what I tell people to do is just cut back on the dose. Don't stop it. Just cut back on the dose and then build it up gradually, and the person will inevitably feel way better.
One other question that we had was they know somebody that has no stomach. Would they be able to process this product?
They will, because the absorption takes place in the intestines. And the inventor, the discoverer of Immunical, Dr. Gustavo Bunos, he originally was doing research on what we call enteric feeding, where you pass a tube directly into the intestines. And this is when he started testing for different proteins. And Immunical was extremely well tolerated. So the short answer is yes.
Perfect. Okay, I've got one last question that wasn't actually asked, but I get it asked quite a bit.
Okay.
Number one, it is gluten-free. And number
Yes.
two, talk to us a bit about the lactose.
Oh, yes. So Immunical is based on a whey protein isolate. And whey proteins ultimately do come from cows. But we are only looking for proteins in the milk that serve as glutathione precursors. We're only interested in the proteins that are glutathione building blocks. So when we search for those proteins, we eliminate a lot of other things. And one of the things that we get rid of is lactose. So there's like a fraction of a percent of lactose in there that nobody who's even the most lactose intolerant person is going to be able to take this product. So if you're lactose intolerant, absolutely not a problem. There are other people that react poorly to milk, and it's usually because of a milk protein called casein. And 80% of true milk allergies are usually due to casein. So it's very, very rare that we find someone that's truly allergic to the Immunical. So it's extremely well tolerated. And again, you could look up, who cares what Dr. Gutman says? Just look it up in your PDR, and you'll see the contraindications there and the adverse effects, and they're really quite minimal.
Well, awesome. Well, we have taken up an hour and 15 minutes of your time, and we hardly lost a single soul during that Zoom.
Okay.
So kudos. Thank you so much. And you mentioned something at the beginning, and I wrote it down. I've been in healthcare my entire adult career. You rarely find a doctor that says, please ask me the tough questions. That's how you know you're legit and you have the answers, and it's okay to ask those questions. So
Yes.
we appreciate your time. We appreciate your expertise. I know it's blood, sweat, tears, and love that has gone into all of your research. I'm sure you've probably sold 120 copies of your book tonight just by putting that out there. I'm going to go order right after this. But we just sincerely thank you for pouring into us tonight, your information, and we're going to take it and run. So, and we'll see you in Houston.